Boom. Okay, they should be able to hear me now. Can they hear you guys? Probably not. So let me fix that. And this should be
Yeah, Honey Money says nope.
okay.
Nope.
Now you
So
guys should be able to hear me, and you should be able to hear them. Correct?
Testing, testing.
let's try this again.
Right? Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome to episode 27 of The Sigma Show. I'm your host, Sigma. Before I get into who is joining me today, real quick, I'm going to go over what our topics for today's show will be. First up, Ubisoft has said some interesting words about a change in their strategy going forward. Something about free-to-play games, monopolizing their output, but who knows what that actually means. We'll talk about that. And the second topic is actually the rest of the show. It's the big Epic versus Apple trial. There's been tons of news, tons of speculation, tons of information about like kind of how the tech world in general, not just video games, but the tech world in general, how it will maybe change based on the results of this case. And we'll try to break down a lot of that stuff for the majority of the show. But to join me in talking about these things, as usual, Superman Jeff,
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Rexicon Jesse,
That's me.
and back after a long hiatus, Miss B Law here from Quirk Chat. What's up?
Hello, everyone.
Nice to have
be
you back.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Can you just let everybody know kind of what it is you do on the internets, like what you're associated with, like where they can check out kind of your content or your products and
Yeah,
services?
sure. Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm B Law, founder and CEO of Quirk Chat. Quirk Chat is a video social network for anime and geek fandom commentary. We also have the Quirk Shop, if you're familiar with that, sell t-shirts, and that's pretty much all we're doing at the moment. So, yeah.
Nice. Super impressive.
Oh,
I'd love to hear all the new experiences and stuff that comes out of like Quirk Chat and whatnot. So I'm really glad you were able to, peel some time away out of your busy schedule to come talk with
Yeah.
us about video games and other such nonsense.
Yeah, I love it here.
But going right into things, first up is this Ubisoft statement, right? If I can pull up the quote, it says Ubisoft is changing its strategy to focus more on high-end free-to-play games. The initial reaction is seen from the industry was like, oh no, because Ubisoft is known for being kind of one of the biggest game publishers with like the highest output of just various software titles, right? Most of them, AAA ish, range from like full price $60 games to like smaller indie experiences like $40, $30, $15, etc. Right? But just wide variety, all paid content. They have started, dabbling in some free to play stuff. Like what's their battle royale? Hyperscape, is that the name of it?
Yeah, Hyperscape. Yeah, Hyperscape. I'm about to say Futurescape, but yeah, Hyperscape sounds good.
Yeah, this sounds better. I'm trying to get the actual name though.
yeah.
We'll just go with
And just even more recently, they just announced that the Division will now get a free to play title coming called the Division Heartland. So like they're turning a big AAA paid game into a future free to play game. So it does seem like maybe they'll be transitioning some of this other stuff that way. But like, how do you guys kind of read this information from Ubisoft? I know there were some differing opinions on it.
Sorry if you all don't mind me going
No, go
first.
right
Like
ahead.
no, not at
the
all.
first thing that I thought, because like having an app myself, like I know we've been looking into like microtransactions and things like that for like the future. And it just seems like they did the numbers and realized that they can make more money if they like give it to you free so it reaches more people and you can basically get more money through microtransactions. Like so it just seems like it's going to be more expensive to win, I guess. That was like my original thought on it. I
Hmm.
don't know if anyone else agrees with that.
Jeff, did you have a?
Yeah, for me, I kind of agree with B. They crunching numbers and figured they make more money if they give it to you free because $60 they get that $60 right out, but through the course of the life of the game, the average person probably spends at least $20 a week on the
Hmm.
game. Let's just say, and so they're making like tenfold that amount of money right back. Hopefully it's not like pay to win. Hopefully it's just cosmetics. I think Apex is a great example of that, where you usually just pay for. Now you can earn these same things through in-game currency, but if you want them a little bit faster, you can get ahead and purchase them. And none of this gives you a leg up. It's all cosmetic stuff, except for like other heroes. So I think that's a great idea. And then also see that I think they're going to take some of their AAA titles and just do spin-offs of free-to-play versions from those same
So you think there will still be
titles.
like a Division
Yeah,
3, but then
there's
there will be a
still
Division free game.
right. Yeah. So like, let's just say if like the Division game they came out, that's a whole separate Division game. I don't think that's going to replace their AAA titles. I think they're still going to do their AAA titles, but they're going to have spin-offs of these other titles like Watch Dogs, United, or something where there's like just an online multiplayer game where you go in and you have to infiltrate a building and hack this stuff and get back out and all this other stuff, and you can dress up your characters and stuff like that. Also, they're the one doing Riders Republic, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm wondering if that's going to be a free to play game because
That's
uh,
yeah.
that's a big window for that where you're going to be playing with all these people online. You're going to want to customize your bike, customize your character. You're going to want to do this. You're going to want to do that. So I think some of their titles they have yet to release might be free to play.
I just want to point out, Honey Money says, isn't that how drug dealers operate too? They just give you like a free taste to hook you, huh?
Oh my god.
How about you, Jesse? Like, what was your takeaway from this press release?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. It does sound kind of like that. I don't know. It's Ubisoft. I don't know what to expect from them. They're wild. But like, the one quote that kind of caught me was what they say. Additionally, we are building high-end free-to-play games to be trending towards AAA ambitions over long term, which sounds like maybe they will stop producing buggy games and put them out on a smaller scope that they can have better control over and then build them up over time versus releasing a whole game that kind of bugs out at the beginning and then they have to fix it with patches. And so they're setting the public's expectations for smaller stuff that will grow so that they can build it. I mean, basically the same way they're doing it now, but better.
That actually sounds suspiciously a lot like how early access on Steam works. We're like, okay, so let's release kind of half a game or like the idea of a game.
Yeah.
It's free, so no one really gets bent out of shape about it being bad or buggy. And then over time, if there's a strong enough core, people stick to it, they spend money on it, and eventually it becomes like a big new franchise. And for sure, that must be much cheaper and probably less stressful than just releasing a big budget thing, right? But I mean, is that a strategy that you think works for a publisher as big as Ubisoft? I know it's the route that a lot of indies go, like Ubisoft being a massive company. Is it fair to take advantage of something like this if that's what they're planning to do? Like, I don't know.
Wasn't that Amazon game Crucible? Wasn't that free to play?
That was free to play.
So they released that, and when they saw that it wasn't working, they quickly unreleased it. It was like, you know what? Never mind. We changed our mind. This isn't a thing. Let's move on. So we've seen that in the past, just the opposite, where it just didn't work. A lot of games will release games in like beta version and stay in beta version for like years, and then eventually will release the game like an official release.
Okay. I mean, I know that the fear is when you hear free to play, it's like a lesser experience, right? And Ubisoft is known for like spending the money to just put out new and different kinds of games. Even if they follow kind of a similar formula, like the open world routine or whatever, at least they'll be in different settings or have different core concepts or whatever, right? But if everything becomes free to play, and especially if they follow this line of thinking that Jesse pointed out, where they want to start small and kind of build too big, it's like, will that stand out enough? Like, cause like you can get a lot of small stuff that just doesn't have the marketing push or just the word of mouth behind it to get it to go anywhere. Like sometimes I do think you probably need just kind of all the fanfare of a big AAA release to even get, cause like honestly, Anthem was a bad game. And I know we're coming back to Anthem after a long time of not talking about it at all. Anthem was a bad game, right? But I don't think nearly as many people would have cared about it or tried to root for it if it wasn't, being pushed as hard as it was. People wanted that game to be good rather than just, oh, it's bad and then forget about it, right? It was EA who ultimately gave up on it. Like the fan base wanted it to be good. So I don't know. I feel like it's much easier to just shrug off these experimental experiences, and for a big company like Ubisoft, I think that could hurt them when they're kind of known for just spending the money on just full price games.
That's
I
probably
do
what
want,
they're trying to do.
yeah, I
Sorry.
do wonder if like my analytical brain is thinking, I'm just like they've obviously like for them to make this decision, there's obviously like some type of market research that it went into it. And I know that there's like a younger generation of gamers who are coming up. Like I wonder if they've decided to make this shift because of things that they're seeing with like younger gamers attaching, or if they're just like trying to create I don't know, more variety, even though they do have already like a large selection. I just I'm thinking like there's a reason that they're doing this, and I'm trying to figure out why. But are people like really freaking out about this? That you think like, what do you feel like people are actually saying about this press release? Because I know the public will take one line and kind
And
of run with
yeah,
it.
Hmm.
I do think from what I've read, it seems like people are shocked, like they're and not shocked like in a bad way, but just kind of surprised, like, oh, that's interesting. Because if
Mhm.
Ubisoft does do this, if they're successful doing it, would that mean that other companies follow suit? Would I mean, EA already has a big free to play game that's making them tons of money in Apex Legends. So like Ubisoft immediately copied that with Hyperscape. But is Hyperscape doing well enough for them to now continue to do this with multiple other titles? I don't know. Like, I don't feel like people really even talk about Hyperscape at all. So I have no idea.
Mhm.
I didn't even know that was a game until it was brought up today.
Right. So Activision, same thing with their Warzone Battle Royale. That's free. They're a big company. They make money off of that, right? But those are tied to like either big franchises or big companies. And so I don't know. Maybe Ubisoft does have a leg up because they're such a big brand that they can afford to advertise a free to play game. But I don't know if there are too many. And I think Lampy said this earlier. It does seem like it will saturate the market because there are already a ton of like straight up free games that are good, really
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
that people can choose from. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have more options, but I don't know. When you get so many, then things start to fall by the wayside, and like there's really not much you can do about that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it could go either way, honestly. Like I'm excited to see how this develops, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
I want to see how it affects fandom in the future. You know, like I think fandoms really started because it was like a group of people all really joining over this game that you've been waiting for, and like the press and like all that build up for it. Like I wonder with this oversaturation or potential oversaturation, like what effect that'll have on fandom as a whole when it comes to gaming.
Interesting.
But I
Ooh,
think
that.
it puts a lot more pressure on that game to be really good because
Hmm.
there's other free to play games that are really good. So before it used to be, oh, it's free, I can give it a try, whatever. It's free, I don't really, have much expectations for it. Now though, the expectation for a free to play game is almost as high as a AAA game. You have
That's a good point.
Apex. You have Apex. We'll be talking about Epic and Fortnite later, but same
Hmm.
thing there. It's a free to play game, but the expectation is of the way it was before, where yeah, it's free to play. I'll have to have a bunch of microtransactions to actually play the game. Now these games are like microtransactions are just an add-on for customization. So
Ooh. Now I want to
hopefully,
hear from like the indie game
right.
Yeah.
developers.
Well,
That'd be
are they
Yeah.
are they feeling bumped out because of all these bigger
yeah.
companies jumping into that kind of market? Yeah, that's definitely an interesting angle. But any lasting thoughts on this before we move on to the main topic for the show? No. All right. Epic versus Apple. It's all you guys have probably been hearing about. Actually, listen to like maybe the first 3 days or so of the actual court cases. Very
Oh
funny
wow.
stuff. In the early goings, like on day one, there's a news story about it. Like kids hacked into the
Yeah,
court
the
line.
Zoom. Oh my God. Free Fortnite.
Yeah, like they're like yelling stuff like free Fortnite, like some
Oh my
obscene
God.
stuff. They were yelling about what they do to Tim Sweeney in order to keep to get Fortnite back on iOS. So
Oh
it was
my
it was very
God.
funny, very chaotic. But
Yeah, all these articles we're talking about, like, of course, like the biggest tech companies are having technical issues.
right, yeah, like the
OMG.
the sound quality in general is like really bad for it to be centered around such big tech companies, right? Like you
Mhm.
can't get like over like 128K audio coming through this thing.
Right.
It's crazy.
Like somebody stuck a camcorder in there, was just recording everything.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
it almost sounds like you're not supposed to be listening to it. But
They don't want you to know.
yeah, they don't want you to know. But if you're not at all familiar with kind of what the beef is between Epic and Apple, real quick, I'll try to give a breakdown. Then we'll go into what has been happening in the case so far. I think it's supposed to be about a 3-week case in total, and I think we're heading into the 3rd week after this weekend is done. But essentially, Apple is being accused of having a monopoly in its App Store, whereas Fortnite, an Epic game, existed in the App Store, and Epic had to give Apple a 30% cut of all transactions from Fortnite while it was in the App Store. Epic then broke Apple's terms of service by throwing in a hotfix that allowed players to be redirected to an Epic store within the game that allowed them to buy stuff without Apple getting a cut. Apple immediately banned Fortnite from iOS. Epic then sued Apple, accusing them of having a monopoly, that there's too much control from them over, the App Store and whatnot. And essentially, they want to open up the Apple App Store, and that's what this case is about. So one of the first things that happened when this case started was Apple and Epic both trying to define what their market was, because I guess you can't say you have a monopoly over a market without first saying what is the market, right? Because there are other ecosystems that have similar rules, and I think that was the crux of what Apple's argument was. But essentially, Apple was trying to say that the iOS App Store is a closed system, if I'm not mistaken, whereas Epic was trying to argue that it was an open system, akin to like Windows PC or Mac OS. And Apple was saying like, no, it's like an Xbox console or a PlayStation console where it's just a closed system. You can only get this service's games on that store or whatever, right? So that was the back and forth. So I don't know how much you guys have read in terms of defining that market, but I'm interested in your takes on like who's kind of right in this instance. Like, do you look at the Apple App Store as a closed ecosystem because Apple curates it, controls it, they keep it free from cyber attacks, etc., or should it be more open like how Windows or Mac OS works on PCs and Macs? I know it's a daunting.
I'll go in. To me, it depends on what the reasons are. So, like, one of the biggest things for me was I couldn't use xCloud on my iPhone. I was about to call it an Apple phone. On my iPhone, I couldn't use xCloud, which sucked because that was another thing they ran into where Microsoft couldn't use it because it couldn't be run through the Apple Arcade. It had to be a whole separate thing, so you couldn't use your xCloud. So that was an issue for me. Like, well, why? Why not? Now, is it a security thing, or is it because it won't be in the xCloud? I mean, in the Apple Arcade, which is a direct competitor with that, and they wouldn't get a share of whatever profits or whatever it is.
Yeah,
So,
I think that was one of the exact arguments that was getting brought up within that first week, right? Because Apple's solution to saying that xCloud breaks their terms of service was saying just release individual apps for each game that will be in Game Pass.
right.
And Xbox is like, that is a terrible idea. We don't want to do that.
No, because then you're becoming exclusive instead of inclusive. Instead of welcoming this ecosystem into there, which will in turn eventually bring you some money at some point somewhere because more people are like, okay, now Xbox is a part of this. Now this is a part of that. Now, okay, now it's like, well, if I want to play on my xCloud, I gotta play on an Android phone, stuff like that. So now you're separating your base from things that they want to do. You're not doing it for the consumer. You're doing it because you're not getting a share of the profit.
That's
Now,
what
if
it
was
looks like,
a
yeah.
security thing where we can't safely provide that, where it would open up your phones to, malware or whatever it is. There's no direct way for us to compensate for that yet. But along the line, that's something we could possibly do. That's a little bit different. That's where you go from telling people no to not right now, but that's something that we can work on. So
I mean, it's still just a soft no, though.
it
Right?
is.
Yeah.
People take it differently. Where you just tell somebody no, you're like, well, not right now, but you know what? Maybe later. And so it comes off a little bit more, kosher. But yeah, same thing with I think they mentioned the Roblox thing in there. They were saying that, well, Roblox has that. You can do your own purchases through Roblox. But, well, that's different. That's not the same thing. They're not really a game. You kind of experience them. You kind of go, it's
Right,
an
yeah, like
interactive thing.
that's kind of the crux of like that first argument is right is like the terminology used. Like what is a closed system versus an open system? What is a game versus an experience? They're trying to put these different things into specific boxes so they can say this belongs and this doesn't belong, right? But I think the nature of video games in general is so nebulous. Like it continues to like mesh together in a way. And video games have always been super synonymous with just tech in general and like just the kind of tech that they use and the kind of experiences that they provide in a way that you can't really box things off in this way. So over time, like even if Apple had a policy, and I honestly I don't know how long the policy that got Epic's store banned has been in place. Like I want to say it's more recent than like a couple years ago. But either way, like
They do it because they didn't want to pay Apple their cut. Like, that's another thing. Like, it looks like everybody, the rich is just trying to take from the rich.
right, yeah,
That's all it
Epic is
seems
kind of on this crusade as if they're doing it for everybody, but they
Right.
do stand to make a ton more money than they've already made should this go their way. And like, I mean, should I be mad at them? Because I do hate the closedness of Apple systems. Like, if it's more open, if more
Yeah.
apps and stores can get in there, like, we would all benefit as consumers. Like, that is just flat out the truth, I think.
Do you have an iPhone?
Me, no, I do not have an iPhone. I'm not.
Okay, I was
I'm
just
not.
wondering. I was just wondering this question.
Is that a call out?
People are gonna say I'm anti-Apple. They're not wrong.
If you remember, I don't know if you all remember, maybe I was looking into this a lot, but whenever this first came out where Epic was like, no, it's too much, this 30%, Apple's rebuttal to that was offering smaller publishers basically a discounted program. So they only have to pay 15%.
Right. It's like
So
if
it's
they
like
make
if
under $1 million
under
or
like
something,
yeah,
right?
under $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow,
So it's
okay.
like that's still in effect. So I think that kind of shut down a lot of the support that
Right,
Epic could have gotten
exactly.
because they're like, I got my little discount, so I'm gonna be quiet over here.
Right. It's like a legit slap in the face. Like, well, we don't care about
Yeah.
you. If you want to make this into like some kind of a humanitarian thing, we can do that too. We can also be the good guy
Right.
in this scenario.
Yeah.
Honey
No,
Money's saying
I
it's
do-
30%. I'm sorry.
Oh no, what was she saying?
Honey Money's adding it's 30% normal though. I really don't know. Like how about the Play Store? That's the thing. 30% actually is kind of the default industry standard. Like it's not written anywhere that it should be 30%, but the Xbox Store, the PlayStation Store, the Google Play Store, and the Apple App Store all take 30% cuts. This has recently started changing. One, because Epic decided to do what, an 88-12 split for the Epic
Yeah.
Game Store.
Yeah.
And then I think
Microsoft follows.
yeah, Microsoft. I don't know if they put it in practice yet, but I do know there were documents that said that they
Yeah.
were considering
Only on
doing it.
console, though. Only on console.
For just
not
console, okay.
Not for PC.
So yeah, so like
it is pretty standard, like, but most people don't realize it. Like for like across all apps. Like for example, if you were this is just an example, but I think you can actually go look and see like if you were to get like Amazon Prime like through the app and try to purchase it through there, you're actually getting charged 30% more than if you were to go to the website. And like a lot of people don't realize
right,
that. Like
because
same
they're
with all the
passing on
subscriptions.
that charge to the
Yeah.
consumer, right, rather than eating it themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all your subscriptions. So like if you have like HBO Max through your phone, you're paying more as opposed to if you go to the site. So it's like that's definitely a thing that we just don't notice. But I think Epic definitely brought it to the forefront of just like, whoa, you're cutting into our money. We're already like doing a split with microtransactions. Like, hold up now.
Right, and so it's hard to be like, okay, yes, you guys both make billions of dollars. You don't need any more money. Just you'll live your lives, right? But this argument does benefit us as like regular people on the surface if Apple is forced to allow competition within their ecosystem. Now their biggest argument against this has been the security. Like people buy into the iPhone or the Apple ecosystem because of its security, because it's closed, because Apple makes sure everything is super easy, nothing ever breaks, you don't get viruses, et cetera, et cetera. And that is due to them controlling heavily what apps are allowed in. Now, B, you are in the tech industry. Like
Yeah.
how, like I won't talk about it from my personal experience because I know I come off as biased a lot of the time. But I'm really
Yeah.
interested to hear your opinion on like how true that sounds in terms of Apple being, you know, kind of a virus-free or security-focused platform.
I think so, honestly, because we recently relaunched our app, and it took us several tries to get our app back into the App Store. To whereas like on Google Play, it was like almost like it wasn't as like strenuous of an issue. To where there were things that Apple caught that Google Play didn't. Google Play, like ours was still very much so delayed, but it was for like other reasons. To whereas like Apple just kept coming back with just like, oh, like you don't have this permission in your privacy policy, or you don't have this or that. It's just like, oh wow, y'all are really checking. So like, yeah, they are. However, there's also like definitely a lot of apps. Like I just don't think that their argument of just like, oh, for moderation is strong enough for some of the types of apps that they allow in the App Store. Like I feel like yeah, I just don't feel like it's a strong enough argument, is my thought. Like they do a decent job, but for them to charge the 30% or like to justify the 30% based off of that entirely, like I don't know. It definitely just feels like a monopoly for sure. So
Right. The other half of this was something that came out, and we'll move on to some of the leaked information that started pouring out because of all the documents that are flying around within this case. But another argument Apple was trying to make was that, or that Epic was trying to make rather, was that Apple charges a premium for the actual device, and so that on top of them taking a 30% cut just seems greedy
yeah.
versus the companies that they were trying to say that they were similar to, like PlayStation and Xbox, who released their hardware at what is the term, subsidized, like
Oh yeah.
yeah, basically they released it
Subsidized
at a loss,
lower.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So like Microsoft, for example, had the news come out that the Xbox console has never made a profit. Like they never make any sort of profit from Xbox sales. They make all their profit from the ecosystem afterwards, like all the game sales, the services that you subscribe to, etc. And so Apple kind of eating from both ends is like, well, something's
doing it.
yeah, like something should happen here. Like they shouldn't be allowed to do this. But again, I'm wondering, is that a strong enough argument for Epic to say like, well, just because Apple doesn't subsidize their hardware, they also can't take this 30% cut that, you know, all the other tech companies seem to be doing?
That sounds absolutely like a marketing pitch.
Yep.
Like, because the fact that they make money off the hardware sales has nothing to do with their argument. It really sounds like it's only to appeal to the mass audience to be like, look at they're greedy, right? Right?
Right,
And like
right.
it's just trying to appeal that way. But so what? It's not part of their argument.
Yeah, though I do hope that there is some regulation that comes to Apple from this, because if you are an app developer, if they decided one day that they wanted to charge 60%, like there's nothing you could do about it. And like
Right.
there's no competitor that you could go to. Like there's no real loophole. So like that's like hurting both app developers and then the people that they're serving, their customers. So like I'm hoping that there's some type of regulation of that, if since there isn't really any competition with them, it needs to be regulated in my opinion.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so even if it comes out, Apple doesn't have to open up its platform. You would say some other body would then have to take control over all these platforms and say like this is what is fair for like the developers and the platform holders.
And like, see, that's where it gets complicated, you know?
Right.
Like, because like at the end of the day, it's like same things with like large companies like Facebook and stuff. How Facebook, like there's a term called zucked, when it's like Zuckerberg decides to copy somebody else's idea, like they did with like Snapchat. It's like, oh well, they zucked it to where
Right.
like people just use IG stories. So but I don't know. It's like, do you get the government involved? And like, I think that's also what like the Facebook litigation has been going with. And it's like how much regulation. These are tech startups, but then they're also like controlling bodies. It's like you either have an iPhone or an Android device. It's like no one can really truly come up from that.
Right.
So,
And Microsoft tried, like one of the biggest companies in the
Exactly.
world. They tried to
And
get
they're
a piece of that pie and got
can't do
pushed
it.
out, right? So that
Yeah.
tells you how
So
difficult it is.
yeah, so I don't have a strong enough opinion on it yet. But what I'm looking into is just like what would it look like if it were regulated? And like who does it help? Who does it hurt? There's always like two sides to it.
Yeah,
So
there's some alternate universe where that happened, and
yeah,
everyone is also mad about that. So,
right? Yeah.
Lampy in the chat is saying they never provided evidence to the court that Xbox never made a profit. It was just an opinion. That is true. I believe the person who they asked said that. But I personally didn't believe it, honestly, when I heard it in trial. I was like, that doesn't sound right. They probably don't make a profit at first, and then, over time, eventually start to turn a
Yeah.
profit.
Especially
Yeah.
at launch.
Show me the
Like I know the Series X and the made like no money at launch.
But I'm positive no one is going to be running out to correct her in the middle of the trial, because that would just make her look incompetent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody check that.
But let's get into some more of the leaked information that has come out due to this. One, in particular, I think is interesting, is the amount of money that Epic has been paying out for the exclusivity that everyone has been kind of upset about. Their Epic Game Store has been kind of locking up a lot of PC games for like a full year of exclusivity so that it doesn't show up on Steam. And the prices that they've paid for these games have come out. Varies all over the place, but one in particular was Borderlands 3, which is like $115 million that they paid to have it be on the store for, what was that, a full year or was that 6 months? I don't remember.
Let me double check.
Either way, it appears to have worked though, especially since we also found out that Epic's Fortnite made like $9 billion last year. So like if you spend like something around 150 million to secure, some more market share after your 9 billion. Yeah, it's right. It's like, what does that even matter? That doesn't hurt anybody.
That's dinner.
But speaking of Epic kind of coming out of pocket, in order to get crossplay to work with Sony, they ended up having to pay Sony money. Like, think about that for a second. They got crossplay on, Apple and Android, on Xbox, on PC. Everyone can play together. But for Sony, Switch as well, right? But for Sony to play ball, they have to pay Sony a commission, right? If you own the game on a PlayStation and another platform, they track your account to see where you spend more money. If you spend more money on the other platform than you do Sony, Epic has to pay Sony the difference, or at least a percentage based on that difference. This is how against crossplay Sony was, purely for monetary reasons. And this
Yeah.
is how they got around it, by actually paying Sony for their trouble.
Yeah, 6 months. Sorry, for Borderlands was 6 months.
6 months, okay.
But they made that money back in the first 2 weeks.
Damn.
Yep.
So like they really didn't even feel it.
No.
But
So that's-
what is your take on the spending? Like, how do you? I mean, they made a ton of money with Fortnite, and this is how they're choosing to spend it. Like, what's your take on the extravagance of it all?
I think that's the only way for them to kind of catch up with Steam, because so many people use Steam. So many games already embedded in Steam. You play League of Legends through Steam. You play all these games through Steam. So in order for, and we see with PlayStation, PlayStation does the same thing. Like they'll have games or certain content exclusive to them for like the first year, to kind of say, hey, this is where you should be. We get the stuff you want. You should be here. And obviously it seems that it worked because they made them a money back in like 2 weeks, like just through Borderlands 3 on the Epic Store.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with the strategy when apparently it's working, right?
Yeah. So back to like what you were saying with Sony, like how they basically had to like pay to play, like gosh, I mean whoever set up Sony's like financial model, like they were thinking ahead. They're like, shoot, we've got what you want, supply and demand, pay up. And I mean, it doesn't seem fair, but it's a business expense, I guess.
I mean, and honestly, they probably knew Epic could do it, right? At that point, Fortnite being like the biggest game on the planet, they're like, look, we don't
Yeah.
want to do this. You're trying to throw your weight around with the popularity of your game. If you want it to happen, pay us some of that money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
We'll take it. And we see Sony has a history of that. Like, yeah, you want to use Spider-Man? Yeah. You pay for all the expenses and we get 80% share of the movies. Like, that sounds good
Oh
to me.
yeah, that did
Like,
happen.
yeah, like,
Oh my gosh.
take all the risks. We just reap the benefits. And when Marvel pushed back, like, hey, listen, it's doing really good. We're doing all the work. It's under our banner. It's in our shared universe. We feel like we should kind of even out the
Like, look, this
like,
doesn't seem fair, Sony. Can we like make it fair?
well, you know what? No, we're not playing anymore. We're
Like,
taking them
we'll take Spider-Man back.
Remember that? Like I just remember waiting. I'm just like, so what's gonna happen?
Like Tom Holland crying on Instagram.
Right.
Picture like the head of Sony with like an infinity gauntlet just snapping his fingers.
Oh my god.
It's like, Mr. Whedon, I don't feel so good. Just Spider-Man disappearing.
Oh my god.
Sencho in the chat says Sony's argument why they didn't want crossplay was also hilarious. We're concerned players won't have the best possible experience. Well, duh, because they wouldn't have to play it on your platform anymore.
Oh,
Like, I think,
ouch.
like, this is the part that I find the most interesting is that because Sony is projecting one thing, to the public, like, hey, we're concerned about, where our players play, etc. I don't think anyone fell for it when they did so. But now you have like the actual documentation that says like, no, we were just worried we couldn't get their money from them.
Right.
Like that was all they were really concerned about. Like at the very least, some of the stuff that has come out from like Nintendo, and Nintendo is like super private, heavily redacted, all the stuff that shows
Right.
up in court. But one of the funnier things that came out from them was that, hey, we don't want anybody working on our games that's involved with the Yakuza.
Yeah, like why was that even a thing? Like what?
It's like it just shows like this kind of difference in morals, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, look, if you're involved with any sort of organized crime, we
We're
don't
gonna
want
put it
you.
out there.
Like it's in writing. It's in writing. You can't work here if you're a part of the mob. Like we don't like
Oh my
it.
god.
Just the Yakuza. Everybody else is okay. You're good. Like, the Yakuza, we don't really trust them too much.
I just thought that was really funny. But already we're seeing like a lot of changes coming from this. Like we know that the result of this may or may not cause a huge ripple in the tech industry, but already a bunch of things are happening because of just the idea that something could change, right? First up was Jeff mentioned Roblox earlier.
Gosh.
They actually changed a ton of terminology within their app
Right.
because they were
Oh,
brought
right.
up as an example of something that, like, hey, you banned Microsoft, you banned Fortnite for having a store within a store, right? What about Roblox, which essentially is an entire ecosystem of games within games, right? And their counter argument was Roblox is an experience versus a game that you play. A game has a beginning, a middle, and an end, which is untrue. That doesn't define a game.
Right.
But they tried to make that argument, and Roblox seemingly wanting to stay out of trouble as opposed to like
As they should.
like they didn't want
No, they're
to
Eddie.
like they just went
It's
public. They just went public. They have like a bunch of shareholders to please now. They decided they were going to change pretty much all the terminology that had to do with like playing, or games to things like experiences to like rather than players active to just active and stuff like that. Like they, as if it changes anything, it's still the exact same experience. But like,
Yeah.
what is your take on? Like, do you think they can get away with something like that? Like, is that I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but limited, legalese knowledge. Do you think that that's something that they could use to actually get away with it? Like, because it's not defined as a game, it'll be able to stay on the store and not get kicked off like Fortnite and Microsoft.
Gosh, like I mean, they're gonna loophole as much as they can, but I think maybe from this some operational definitions will come out of it to where like the industry is like, this is a game, da da da. This is
Right.
an experience. Like all these things like will probably come out of it. But I mean, lawyers, gosh, if you've ever spent time in a courtroom, I have only a few times, but the few times it's just like they will just BS their way around. Any litigation, even with like the US stuff that was going on, it's just like you're gonna loophole your way around to get what you want. And if you have a smart enough lawyer, you can do it.
And the thing is, like, I'm sure like Roblox never gave Apple this excuse. Like this is why you shouldn't like charge us this percent because we're an experience. We're not a game. I feel like they took their defense for their case from this case now.
Yep.
Apple gave them their defense. So like
Yeah.
now they're building their narrative. Like this is what we are. Hey, it was mentioned. They told you what we are, and this is what we are. So
Yeah, we're not part of this. Like, don't
Yeah.
look this way. We're fine over here.
They got lucky. My goodness.
Roblox, it's like you have a sibling. Like, well, you got in trouble. You're like, well, how come he didn't get in trouble? He ate it too.
Right. That's a
Leave me
lot.
out of this.
That's a lot of
I didn't
Epic's
eat it.
argument.
I had a cookie experience.
I love it.
Oh my god! Like that is legitimately a lot of Epic's argument. Is like, look, you're banning us for doing the same thing that guy. Matter of fact, Microsoft also had a similar story, right? Like when they were submitting their app to Apple for Game Pass, they said, well, what about this video service here that's doing this thing? Apple was like, oh, they're doing that? They got them banned accidentally.
Oh wow!
Like Apple went and banned whoever Microsoft pointed out when they made that case. Like, hey, we're just trying to do what these guys are doing. They're like, oh, really? Gone.
And the thing is this, like, it's okay, and it's pretty much what the healthcare system does. Like the amounts that they charge for things, they wouldn't charge a person like normally if the insurance system didn't exist, they wouldn't be charging like $500 for a band-aid, $600 for this. But they charge you because it's going to the insurance. Insurance has the money, they're just gonna pay it. Same thing with Epic. Like, okay, well, we're gonna charge this amount because you have the money. It's to you, it's just pennies and dimes. Like, you're just gonna send it out. Now they're looking at these pennies and dimes, like, you know what? Like, this isn't okay. And I think that kind of goes everywhere. Like I said, the healthcare system, if some of these insurance companies looked at what they're being charged for and be like, listen, this isn't okay. We need to look at the system and fix it. Things will be a lot better. Like, if you ever go to the hospital and you just look at the things that they charge you for. I took my son, and they charged so much just to tell $3,000 just to tell him that he didn't need stitches. They literally looked at him, checked his pressure and stuff like that, and
Wild.
then that was it. Nothing.
You could
Like-
see that across all industries.
Yeah, just like-
Healthcare, education. Shoot, we could have a whole podcast
Right.
talking about that.
You're right. But Lampy again reminds us. He says your healthcare system, Jeff. No cost.
Yes.
No cost for healthcare here. Lampy's in the UK.
Canadian.
Oh, we're in America.
Yes.
Grim reminder of our freedom to pay for everything through the nose.
Oof.
Yes.
What a privilege.
Right, in American healthcare. Exactly.
But some other consequences, right? Both Sony and Valve are now being sued by other entities. This is completely separate from the Epic versus Apple thing, but I do think that there's at least some sort of correlation. They're being sued for having a monopoly in the digital storefront. I want to talk about the PlayStation one first because it's a little different than the Valve one. Essentially, some time ago, you guys may have heard of this. Sony stopped other companies from being able to sell like digital codes. So like you can't buy.
Not on Amazon.
Right.
Not on anything.
You
have
can't go to
buy
GameStop or Best Buy or anything to get like a digital code for a Sony game, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so now you can only get digital versions of games on the Sony store. You have to, boot up your PlayStation, go on the Sony website, and buy it there. Retailers are now suing Sony, saying like that's an unfair monopoly. I'm wondering if that was something that was already in the works, or at the very least, the courage to go after Sony with this is because of the beef between Epic and Apple, because it's a lot of the same arguments. Like, look, you're limiting competition because a retailer can offer a sale on a code that the Sony store doesn't for that exact same code, right? Because they're a retailer. Sony can now, and they have, charged $70 for a brand new game. And you can't do anything about it. Like, it's the only place you can get it, from the Sony store, right? Like, that's a monopoly on paper, right? They control it entirely.
And there's going to be more from this because if you know, like, the way these lawsuits work, you probably have lawyers just sitting around listening. And, like, you know what? I can approach these bodies and let them know, like, hey, you could then sue this entity because they're unjustly charging you for something that they're not charging somebody else for, or a monopoly on this. So there's all these lawyers just sitting around to put these class action lawsuits on the table. Like, listen, like, you got to think about it too. Like, some of them are going to come consumer too. Like, hey, listen, you guys have been unjustly paying that extra 30% without knowing about it. Like, you guys can get compensation if you go ahead and sign up on this website or whatever it is. So I think there's going to be a lot of fallout and a lot of lawsuits from this particular case.
Okay, real quick, Lampy
Yeah.
with the correction says it's not retailers doing the suing; it's users in a class action lawsuit, and they were using retailers as examples in their
Oh,
case. Okay, so I might have missed that, but thank you for letting us know.
Oh, we've got a fact checker. I love that.
Right.
Bringing out the facts. Thank you.
he's a man of letters.
Similar issue, well, a slightly different issue, with Valve and their new lawsuit. Essentially, they're saying that Steam's dominance in the video game landscape makes it so that smaller game developers can't charge their own pricing for games in that store because Steam controls that store and it's the biggest store, right? So, like, yes, there are other digital storefronts on PC that you can sell your game, but apparently, a particular dev, let me see if I can find the specific thing, but a particular dev launched the game on Steam. They wanted to launch it somewhere else. They asked Steam about it. Steam said, if you do that, we'll pull it from the Steam store.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Hmm.
that's not where I thought this was going.
Because that essentially, because Valve service again takes that 30% cut from commissions and whatnot. Personal risk, blah 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 blah. Yeah, so essentially they were trying to sell their same game on another storefront where they would get a bigger cut of that split. So they wanted it on wherever this other store was, as well as Steam. Steam says don't do that. It has to be on Steam only, otherwise we'll pull it off Steam. So this is what that suit is about. Steam being kind of a big, like, it's the most popular, PC game store, right? Like, Epic Store exists now, but Steam is still probably the bigger, more popular one where you want to get your game on if you want to get, mass appeal. Does a suit like this hold water because there is still competition and Steam is just kind of throwing their weight around because they're the most popular? Do you feel like they're kind of justified in kind of limiting what the games that are released on their platform can do?
Is there like I don't know what the terms and conditions like for people who sell on Steam are, but like is there like an exclusivity or like you can only sell on Steam clause in there? Because if not, like if they haven't made that apparent, like when you sign up for Steam that you can only sell on Steam or you'll get your thing taken off, then like they actually do have a case. But I don't know. Like, yeah, that would be interesting to see. Like, is that already in their terms and conditions?
Yeah, and is it like you can't do the initial release on there, or is it a set timed exclusive? Like, or what is it? Because just to say you can't sell that in two places, otherwise we're taking it down here. I feel like is kind of abuse of power.
Yeah.
But if it's like okay, for the first 30 days you can only have Valve, you can only have it on Steam. That's it. But after that 30 days, you're free to sell it anywhere you want.
I can't think of anything else that like only allows that because like even if you're selling like merch or like something else online, like you can sell it on Etsy, Amazon, whatever. So like I just wonder why they've decided to make that stand.
I know Twitch is like, if we stream here now, we can't post this on anything else until 24 hours. You have to wait 24 hours to post it on
Yeah,
there.
there's an exclusivity thing once you make
Yeah,
not partner.
affiliate.
What's the other affiliate?
Yeah, yeah, which is fine, but it's not saying you can't post anything anywhere else, period, or we're taking down your videos. So I think there's a
Yeah.
fine line between exclusive and just like world domination.
Well, I think
For
that's
real.
that gets into the weeds then, right? Like, what does the contract say? Like, is there a contract when you release games on Steam? Lampy again with some info says Valve/Steam they do have a contract clause, which he adds is pretty standard, that says you can't charge lower on another store than Steam. If you want to sell it lower elsewhere, you have to lower the price on Steam. And I believe the problem with that line of thinking was the dev essentially couldn't make any money if he were to do that, right? Because of the cut, the amount of money that Steam takes, like that was the issue. Like because of that 30%, if you were to lower that price, then he's lowering how much he gets out of, his 70%. He would then have to raise it if he wanted to try to recoup that, which I guess which could make your game unpalatable if it's too expensive for what, it seems like it is. So him trying to
And then
sell it
that's why
elsewhere
Epic
with a different split, I think he was hoping he could
to recoup.
recoup something that way. But if he did sign a contract that says, "Hey, you can't do this," that's one thing. But also, does he have the right to fight against that? If he thinks that this is an unfair contract, especially for like his particular situation, there are probably other smaller devs who have a similar situation. He feels it's unfair. Does he have a right to kind of challenge that, even though it's it's their terms, it's industry standard, but he doesn't think it's right?
Well, Epic signed a contract too, didn't
This is right. This
Yeah,
is true.
Yeah, I signed that, but I'm just saying it's not fair. That's what we're poking at. Yeah, it's not fair. It monopolizes. I think, and that's why kind of Epic went to that. Was it 72% split or whatever it is? They went from the 30 to 70 or whatever
No,
it was.
to 88-12.
88-12. Okay, to kind of give the developers some more money back. To kind of force Valve to have to do that. So I think that kind of plays into that as well, because they're going to say, well, over here, Epic is given this amount of money. But also it can be made that, well, why don't you go to Epic then? Why don't you go release your game over there? And I think that was Epic's plan, was to start trying to get some of these developers to just release on the Epic store.
Yeah,
Hey,
without even having to pay for it, right?
Right.
Yeah, just make it make it seem like a more dev friendly, consumer friendly storefront, because Steam was pretty, monopolistic before Epic came around. Like the Windows Store existed, there was Origin, there's like Ubisoft Connect they call it now, but like those games don't have, I mean those storefronts don't really have any market share at all. So Epic kind of bought their way into, big market share. And honestly, that's good. I think that's a good thing, because you want competition in a marketplace. Like it's good for all of us. But
Epic had a good point. He said, here's the question. Epic are doing an 88-12 split and claim that's better for the consumers, but are they actually charging less, or are they still selling for the same price?
Pretty much
for the same price.
Pretty much for the same price as the Steam, from what I've seen of going on Epic and looking at like when they have a sale and what's charged where and whatever. It does seem to be about the same price as Steam, and also like games that are on GOG.com, also usually around the same price for those games that they share. GOG also has a lot of older games that they don't have.
Well, for the case that you were just talking about with the person who wanted to sell on Steam and another platform, were they going to charge the same price for the game on the other platform?
yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I think it was the same price, but I think the revenue split is what was different.
Then I just wonder why not Epic, Steam came down so hard on them. If they're charging like the same to the consumer, I don't understand why there's an issue. But
Right. Because I could see if it was cheaper, they're like, well, people go there and get it instead of buying it here, so it needs to be the same price. So that way,
Interesting.
The game is called Overgrowth. Launched on Steam.
Yeah. I'm gonna look
And then
into
PC
it
Storms
later.
emerged that charged a lower commission. And when they asked Valve about putting it on the other storefront, the company responded by saying that they would remove Overgrowth from Steam. See, they're not being specific, and I want to say it's because the other platform was probably the Epic Store.
Oh.
Because it just
They
reads.
probably wouldn't care if it was itch.io, so you're probably right.
Right, so it's like, yeah, because it was Epic, I
Yeah.
think that's why they got that kind of reaction. Though they don't say
That
it's
would make
Epic, I
sense.
think it was probably Epic.
But do they have the right to ask who the other who the other person is? Like,
They probably just that's the thing. This quote doesn't say that
'cause it
happened.
doesn't-
I'm assuming they
well,
said that to them. Like, hey,
Right.
this new storefront that has a better commission rate, which we all know Epic announced giving developers a better commission rate. It's like, hey, what if I put my game on that store? Steam was like, no, we don't like that.
No, we don't like them.
Right, we don't like them. That's what it sounds like. This is all speculation, mind you. But okay, so still about a week left in this trial. From everything that you've been reading, seeing, or that you hope deep in your heart, where do you think this will land?
Ugh.
I'm interested to hear opinions,
Well, I
predictions.
would like to do do we know? I want to know like who the judge presiding over this is, and look at some of like his past cases, like some of the other
Mm.
It's
stuff
actually
he's
a woman.
presided. Oh,
I'm forgetting her name. I had her name in my head at
uh,
some point, but it is. I believe it's a Hispanic woman
Mm.
who's presiding over the case. But she's not super tech savvy, it seems like, because like a lot of things like and there's no jury in this case, right? It's just they're making their case to the judge. So the judge will have like a
right.
bunch of questions like, hey, explain this, explain that, explain this, because she's trying to get an understanding of what's going on and like trying to make it make sense to her. Like that's what I've picked up from listening.
So Epic Judge hints at a compromise and feud over App Store. U.S. District Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers appeared to be looking for a middle ground while hearing from economists called by both companies as experts. And that was 3 days ago from the Bloomberg.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah.
So yeah, so any
Because my question
mhm.
was there ever a middle ground proposed? Like, listen, we won't charge you 30, we'll go down to this. And Epic like, you know what? No, that's still not good enough. Okay, well, what if we took it down to this? Like, I would have to believe that these mediations happened, or Epic wanted this to go to court because they wanted this to be what it is.
That's what I
Because
feel
this
is probably
case
happening.
is
Yeah.
gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be precedent for a long time. Like,
Hmm.
Hmm. Well, before this all began, one of the things that if I'm remembering correctly and can trust sources that I saw, was that this is what Epic expected, and that before they broke their contract with Apple, they had this plan. They knew this
Yeah.
was going to happen. They had a strategy set up. They started their coalition of other people that wanted to, be upset at Apple too.
eat the rich. Is that what you were gonna say?
I mean, I'm always about to say that, so you're not wrong.
Mm.
But yeah, so that this was, an orchestrated attempt by them uh, to do this, and that they had their public media, they had a PR firm company ready to go. They had, a plan for multiple strings of how this was going to work. They knew they were going to be viewed as the bad guy, like that they were billion-dollar company going after a billion-dollar company. No one's going to be sympathetic to them. So how do they make it sympathetic? Like, what can they do? And so, like, they knew all of this going in, which makes it just kind of frustrating. I mean, what you were saying, Casey, I do hope that good things come out of this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, I do. I don't know if an open Apple product store is the best solution. I personally like the idea of openness. So like the way Android does it. I like, options. I like shopping on Itch and GOG and Humble Bundle, which Humble Bundle is also owned by like CD Projekt Red or whatever, so it's still a big thing, whatever. Like I want that ability to have, because they each bring their own thing. With like Itch, one of the things that I like, and I sell stuff on Itch, that they have a fluid uh, amount that you can give to Itch. So like you can set it to zero, you can set it 10%, 20%,
Yeah.
and they're a much smaller company,
Right.
but still they offer something. So if there's a game on there, I try to buy it there because I know that's probably going to help the developer more and it's going to help this platform more.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't have an answer for like, here's what I hope happens, but I do hope whatever happens does lead us more towards that sort of environment where it is more friendly to the developers and spreads it out across multiple people and like multiple companies doing their thing rather than Apple making all the money and then Epic wanting to make all the money. And then we're all, just the humans in a kaiju film watching these things happen and we're all getting crushed.
Hmm. Gosh, I kind of yeah, no, I totally agree with you there of just like that's like what would be great if it happened. Uh, though
Keyword if it happens, yeah.
yeah, but honestly, like kind of to Jeff's point earlier, I kind of feel like the ramifications of people losing this case are like so high because then everybody and their mom is gonna come after Apple of just like, well, I want my cut. So I feel like at the end of the day, there's going to either either Apple's going to win or there's going to be some type of like compromise that applies to everybody on the platform. So the latter one would probably be the best case scenario as opposed to just like, well, nope, 30%
Right.
everybody. But
Yeah, I feel,
yeah.
and I think that's what I'm afraid of, right? Is it if Apple kind of just unanimously wins, says like, okay, Epic, you're in the wrong, you don't have a case here, their platform is fine, it's just like all these other platforms, they can do what they want on it, right? Then
Mhm.
it's locked in. Like that 70-30 probably in the minds of all tech just becomes the norm. And anyone who undercuts that probably suffers somehow for it. Like I'm not sure how, but like when you have a standard, usually things kind of feed into it in a sense, right? I'm no fan of Apple, but I will openly admit how innovative they have been in the past in terms of like pushing tech and applications and stuff like that, like just turning your phone into like a computer that you can do all this stuff with. But I don't like how greedy they are, and a lot of the excuses they make for why they do the certain sort of things they do is just based in greed. Like there's no reality to them thinking about the consumer or the product or safety or nothing like that. It's all bull. So I would really love if that facade was kind of just broken by Epic winning this case and forcing Apple to just play nice with everybody else, because they don't do that. Like they do whatever they want to do and they're powerful enough to kind of do that.
Well, we see that a lot too. We see that with Sony. We see that a lot of companies where, they offer something that you can't get from anywhere else. So they're like, well, either you follow these rules or you don't live in my house type situation. So,
Right. You don't pay
Basically.
rent in here, like, but I do pay
Right.
you. Like I don't care.
yeah, like, and I want to bring up like the judge questioned the anti-steering policy targeted in the lawsuit as well, which also blocks developers from including a link or other information in their apps to steer users away from the store to buy virtual goods elsewhere online at a discounted rate. So that's something
Mm.
else that's being targeted in this lawsuit, and the judge questioned that looks like this week or something.
Ooh.
Right, so it does look like stuff is being brought to light, right? That to the lay person looks like, well, that doesn't seem right.
Right.
Right, like she's like the judge is not big in tech, but like just as a person who buys things, who uses technology, is like, wait, why are you like you already make so much money, like you don't need to
Yeah.
be that greedy.
Oh wow,
Mm.
there's a bunch in this article too. They're saying that Microsoft saw an Apple Store workaround as early as 2012. With the Windows software maker asks Apple if users would be allowed to subscribe to Office on Microsoft's website rather than inside the iPad to ensure a consistent user interface. Apple rejected, despite Microsoft saying it would pay a commission to the California-based company. Um, yeah, so there's a lot more in this one article about a lot of different things.
Yeah, just Apple, just they want
Yeah.
full control and blah blah blah.
And you got to believe they want to see an end come to this. Not only them, but like all these companies are having a lot of their information exposed. Like, listen, you guys need to figure this out soon. There's too much coming out. Like, there needs to be a quick resolution to this. So that could also be kind of pressure and some type of like compromise or ceasefire. Like, listen, this needs to come to an end because there's a lot of stuff coming out and a lot more lawsuits you gotta have to think are going to come from this as well.
But here's something that I don't think a lot of people might be thinking about, but is a absolute possibility should this case go in Epic's favor. Like, what if other storefronts get lumped into this deal, right? Like, because Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo are also considered closed platforms, right? What if they're forced to open up their platforms and essentially like, okay, so maybe you have a PlayStation 5 or you have a Series X, but you can get games from the other platform on your console. Like this probably won't work with actual software, but Microsoft has a streaming service. Sony has a streaming service. What if you can get
Well, if you
PlayStation
look-
Now on Xbox or Xbox Game Pass on PlayStation?
Well, if you look, they have apps from other developers. There's not just Microsoft apps.
Right,
There's,
yeah.
people who made apps in the App Store.
Yeah, there's stuff like, like
Yeah.
Spotify and Netflix, etc. What's to stop? Like, why couldn't Sony launch PlayStation Now in the Xbox store? Why couldn't Xbox launch Game Pass in the Sony store? It's because they don't want the competition. That's the only
Right.
reason, right? They would probably
Right.
reject it outright. Honestly, they're probably respectful enough of each other to not even try that, I would think.
And
I
I think
assume.
there's
Okay.
a huge difference because it's not like Microsoft is saying you can only get Zune music on the Xbox. You can't get
They did push it heavy
Apple
though.
Music. Yeah, they did. They pushed it pretty heavy, but it died, so that's something else. But they're not saying you can't get your Pandora music on. You can only listen to music through the Zune player on your Xbox. So I think that's a difference where you can still get these other places on there, but games, I don't see that happening because it just, yeah, it just won't.
I mean, also, I'm not a developer. Like I don't code. That's legitimate wizardry to me. But on your on what you were saying of like getting PlayStation stuff to run on Xbox, I assume on the developer end, that probably has more to do with it than respect. Is to be like, well, how do you get God of War to run on an Xbox?
Well,
Be
that
like, that's not worth the amount of time it'll take
right.
for us
That's
to
that's
make
why I was
that work.
talking about
Yeah.
mostly the streaming version, like because
Oh, okay.
yeah, because yeah, if you try to get like the actual code to run on the
I was
yeah,
gonna
that's
say
probably
those
a
different
non-starter.
languages,
Yeah,
like probably not.
but they both have streaming services that they're trying to champion, right? Like Xbox's
Mm.
is definitely doing more than PlayStation's, but they both exist. Like, why not double dip in that way? I know Xbox would be down. Sony, I don't know.
So do you want to mingle with anybody? No.
Right? Yeah, like
Yeah.
everybody burn everything else you got. Come here.
Right. And you got to believe that Xbox well, Xbox in particular doesn't see anything kind of coming to them. They seem to come out ahead if goes through because a lot of their case was also with the xCloud situation. So I feel like if they were worried about, this affecting them in the negative light, they kind of would have shied away from being involved altogether. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not going to say anything because if this comes out this way, yes, we'll reap these benefits, but if it comes out that way, we'll also
Right? Yeah, Microsoft does seem to have. Well, honestly, I'm a little curious about that. Like, it does seem from what I remember hearing and reading from the case, it seems like Microsoft does have a vested interest in taking these shots
And
at
Epic.
Apple, right? Like,
Yeah.
like being on Epic's side and like taking down Apple, right? Like they're longtime rivals, Microsoft and Apple. So I'm sure there's no love lost there for sure. But like, is it more so that they're compelled to do this because they've been, subpoenaed by the court? They're like, look, you've done business with this company. We need to see these documents. We need to call these witnesses, et cetera, et cetera. Because like Nintendo, I'm sure didn't want to be bothered with this, but they have documents floating around out there. Same thing with companies like Roblox, who they're just kind of caught in the crossfire. Like, I wonder, like, Microsoft seems like they're loving this, but I don't know if they. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah,
Nappy says they were
I'm
subpoenaed.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, yeah, like similar to like what Jesse was saying earlier. I do feel like there was a lot of preparation that went into this case, and like they were probably very strategic. It seems like the opinions right now of Epic winning are like going down. It seems like they started strong, but like now the opinions like
Yeah, Apple has
going
really
down
good lawyers.
because they're Apple.
They make that 30% on everything. They
Like,
got the money to spend on
Jeez.
lawyers.
Exactly.
Well, let me ask you this: like, what about this case affecting like when you go to a gas station? You're like, well, it's 20 cents more if you use a credit card, where cash it's 20 cents less. Like now you're saying, well, if you pay this, if you use this currency, you'll pay less. But if you have to use that, because we have to pay a fee to process debit
Yeah.
transactions.
That's why it's a transaction fee. That's why it's higher.
Yeah.
They pass it on to the
Yes.
consumer. I wonder. I mean, it does seem kind of out of left field, but I don't think it's so far out there that it could not have some sort of ramification. They would have to make the argument, I think, that there's some sort of monopoly going on, though, and that they would need to have other companies that they could use that would have different rates. But there's probably a standard transaction fee rate, I would guess, right?
All retail places or gas stations, restaurants, that's the point of having the point of sale is you swipe your card, they pay the fee. That's how the companies make their money. They pay a fee to process that transaction.
Lampy says that laws here abolished card charges. Like,
Oh,
why?
wow.
Why is America such a third world country?
Yeah, right?
I want to live where you live.
Can we catch up with you all?
Like,
No,
jeez.
capitalism.
But
Gosh.
so is that part of the problem then? Like the game and tech industries are so young that they just haven't established these rules yet. Like that's what this
Yeah.
case might actually do, right? Is like set like a base rule that everyone has to follow, and that they'll have to like ratify and say, okay,
Right.
this is the law now. Like you have to
Yeah.
charge this amount in the digital storefront. You can't be exclusive. You can only do this, that. Like this might all get spelled out after this case.
They're
Yeah,
gonna
and
reference
it's
this case. There's gonna be Apple,
mhm.
via the case Apple versus Epic. It's gonna be like Brown versus
Right.
the Board of Education.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is definitely the time, like all throughout the pandemic and beforehand, like all of the large companies, Facebook, Twitter, the likes were all getting like put into court for regulation. Because I think like what Facebook's maybe like 15 years old now, and like a lot of these companies have been around for a while, and like no one's truly regulated them. And it's like even like on a consumer side, if something happens in the digital world, like there is little repercussion. Like they're starting to become more, but like you can't go to like the Facebook police truly and like have something other than like, oh, you're blocked. So I think now we're trying to figure out like what does it look like finally? What does it look like to regulate digitally? And
Yeah.
it's very interesting to see.
Definitely.
Totally. And I think also what you were saying earlier too about hopefully one of the things come out of this is definitions. Like
Mhm.
that we all agree. And that's something you also games are so young. That's an issue with like within games themselves as well. Like how do you explain parts of a game? Because we'll call like a part of a game a scene, but that's not actually correct. It's its own thing, but we're borrowing that term from movies because it doesn't have its own
Mhm.
thing. So yeah, in and outside as the art and as the business, it lacks that sort of concrete understanding, and probably a huge part of why all of this is able to happen because we
Yeah.
don't have that. And that I do hope that comes out of it.
Okay. So any final thoughts for the Epic versus Epic? Yeah.
I do because Lampy brought it up and I wanted to say something.
Okay.
I gotta scroll back up into chat to find it though. It was
Lampy
really
Lampy's been
interesting.
doing the fact checking and researching, or is that someone else?
It's
Lampy's also doing that, but this
mostly
is
Lampy.
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
just wanted to say shout out to you because you've been killing it for us today.
Right.
yeah.
He's always dependable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, you
think
did say a
first,
lot,
like-
Lampy. That's why I
Yeah.
defined it.
I think he works for like MI5 or something. I gotta
Probably. British Secret Service for sure.
So, one of the things I find really interesting that Lampy brought up is I can see if Apple loses this case, there will be cases against Sony and Xbox and Nintendo about the same lines, which is something that we brought up. Like, well, they own their digital storefronts they choose. I am curious about that because, and I'm gonna probably talk myself out of this argument in the second half, but like, okay, but Sony, PlayStation, and Xbox are game consoles. The iPhone is a computer.
That was their biggest
Yeah, I
argument.
think Epic
It's-
was trying to make the same exact case.
But it is. There is no way. It is a computer. It does all the things my computer does and also makes phone calls, which my computer does too. But so, I mean, it is a tiny computer. In that same case, okay, then what is the difference between a Switch and an iPhone, and why is the Switch not a computer but the iPhone is, when the Switch and the Xbox and the PlayStation can run most of the stuff the iPhone can? Like, where is the line between a computer and an entertainment device, a game system?
Because if you get specific with the hardware, and then PlayStation and Xbox both have Internet Explorer on there now, don't they? Where you can surf the internet on your Xbox.
I don't know
They
about-
have browsers.
Yeah, I don't know about PlayStation having Internet Explorer.
I feel like they just got.
They might have a browser. I doubt it's Internet Explorer.
I pray it's not Internet Explorer.
Like Xbox doesn't even have Internet Explorer. They changed it to Edge. They like forget about.
Yes, they did.
they like
Yes,
forget
yes,
about this. But yeah, I think that was something that they were definitely trying to define during the case. Like, oh, this is a closed system. Like there was a line of questioning that sounds ridiculous on the surface, but it serves a very particular purpose. Like they would ask the person on the stand, like, can an Xbox be used without a screen? Can it be used unplugged from a power device? Like, do you need any kind of apparatus to interact with the Xbox? Like, yes, they'll need a controller. Like, so it's like they're trying to make all these comparisons of how it's different from a phone, how it's different from a computer, etc. And like those things in the long run become important because sure, the same tech exists inside and you could put like Google Maps on your Switch, but it doesn't functionally make sense to do that because it has like thumbsticks and shoulder buttons and stuff. And it's like that's a dumb thing to do.
And you have to take it down to its basic form. Like, what is the Xbox? Can you turn it into kind of a computer? Yes, you can.
Yeah, sure. Like, of course you could.
Can you turn a computer into a video game console? Yes, you can. But at its basic form, it is a computer. Same thing with a phone. Like, that phone in its basic form is a phone, but also a computer. Can you hook up your controller to it to play games on there? Yes, you can.
I'm going to argue that point with you. I'm going to argue. You say your phone is a phone first, but also a computer?
Yes.
All right. How many phone calls have you made in the last week on your phone?
Let's see.
How many?
You're not wrong.
Okay. 15.
15. Cool. Okay. How many times have you used your phone to access the internet?
Oh, man.
A day.
Unmeasurable.
Right. It's a computer.
It's kind of
it has a phone function.
It's a computer that can make phone calls. Sure.
Right.
I agree.
Hold on. I think I'm a little, like, just a tad bit lost on, like, why they're trying to make this definition and, like, what it will prove out to them if they can do that. Because, like, if they're trying to make, I don't know, like, when you think of the iPhone, yeah, it's, like, the iPhone, but it's, like, also the system. Like, if you want to write an app in Swift code, like, it's going to, like, have to go through Apple. To whereas, like, if you were to do something in Java or whatever for, like, an Android, you have a whole selection of different companies that could, I mean, like, everyone for the most part uses Samsung, but like could go through all the different types of phones. So like it still does, I don't know like what the point of the argument was, but like for me, I'm just like, well, while it is a computer, it's also very monopolistic because it's half of the market. Well, more, I would say more than half.
Yeah, probably more than half at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason is because, like Lampy's saying, it helps them define the relevant market, right? Like,
okay.
Like an Xbox console and a PlayStation console is not in direct competition with the iPhone because a consumer can have both because they do different things. Like that's the point they were trying to make. Like if you have an iPhone, it doesn't mean you don't need the other two and vice versa. So for Apple to then, be so exclusive and monopolistic, it's not because they're bumping out their competition, trying to edge out their competition. It's because they're greedy. Because like they're not in the same ecosystem. Like the experience you get playing Fortnite on the phone is not the same as you get by playing on a console, even though it kind of is. Like on the surface, it kind of is. Like let's be real, but that's not what you use your phone for. Like it's not going to be the only thing you do with that phone. You're going to have to use it for other things. So you may want to play Fortnite elsewhere on a thing that's dedicated to Fortnite. And I think that's what they were trying to get at. Like, let us do this on your phone because your phone should be open like all these other general purpose devices that allow people to do all these general purpose things. And ignore Microsoft, ignore Sony because they're very focused on games and you're not. Like games is part of what you do, but they're focused on games. So I think that's what they were trying to differentiate. And it is kind of a slippery slope. It's like a kind of bare minimum dividing line. But
I focused on games. Wasn't it the Xbox One that was specifically focused on not games? They were like, we're the all-in-one.
Yeah.
Like that. I feel like it's
an entertainment device.
Right.
True. It's still not general purpose. And like if we're going by the definition that they're throwing out there, that's even as an all-in-one entertainment device, it's still not general purpose because you still wouldn't use it outside of your house or like you would use your phone or your PC.
Well, let's look at the definition for a computer.
I don't know. I don't know how that's going to
lawyer this right now.
An electronic device for storing and processing data, typically in binary form according to instructions given to it in a variable program.
Boy, howdy is that broad.
That's it.
That's electronics.
That's
basically.
It's a calculator.
Yeah, that's my fridge.
A computer is a device that accepts information in form of digitalized data and manipulates it for some result based on a program, software, or sequence of instructions on how the data is to be processed. Complex and computers include the meaning of storing data, including a program, which is also a form of data, for some necessary duration.
Yeah, that's everything.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not uh, a Super Nintendo. It does not store data. Or does it? Ooh, I don't know. Does programming,
The
like
car-
the programming in order to read a
The
cartridge, does that
cartridge
count?
stores data.
Yeah, the
Right.
cartridge has the
But
battery
is
which can
there
store
some
data.
stored data in the console? I don't know.
I mean, there is ROM and like the BIOS. Does that count as stored
That probably does
data? It
count.
is
Yeah,
data.
that counts.
Yeah.
All right, I'm wrong then.
Super Nintendo's a computer.
I-
We've solved it, guys.
Oh, computers. There we go.
We fixed it. All right. So, any other final thoughts? Because show was running long. I expected it to, but I think we've reached the end of pretty much everything we're going to see. Like, I'm absolutely fascinated with this case. Can't wait to see how things end. And hopefully we'll be back here to talk about it at some point in the future.
Mm.
Right. I want to thank everyone in chat for joining us. I want to thank my 3 guests. Superman Jeff, where can people find you if they're looking for you on the internet?
So you can find me all across social media on Twitch, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter at SupermanJeff12. We also have a Discord, if you don't know about that, 18 and older. Pop in there for the open party. We have a community of gamers who stream. We have community game nights. We play different things. Monday, which is tomorrow, the day after today, I'll be doing Monday Night Siege, where we play Siege, obviously. Come through, come play. We have a lot of fun, and yeah.
Nice. Jesse, thank you for joining me. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can also find me on Twitter, which is twitter.com/RexiconJesse. Reddit, also RexiconJesse, and twitch.tv/RexiconJesse. I try to keep it simple. And you can find me, I do a bunch of streaming. I'll be doing tomorrow my stuff that I'll be doing for Behind Schedule from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'll do that Tuesday as well. And then I stream Tuesday, or Thursday nights with my friend RB Cheap Light. And I'm also trying to get like a community night together where people can play Fall Guys, because now they have like the community thing of Fall Guys.
Yeah.
And I want to do that now because you can have but it's like a minimum of like 12, so I have to get enough people into it.
Oh, I'm down.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Oh, sweet! I
That's
want to do that
crossplay
on
now,
Thursday
right?
night. Say what?
Yeah, it's crossplay now, right? I thought I saw somewhere.
I think so. I have to double check that.
I do vaguely remember someone saying that it has crossplay.
So I know it's coming to Switch, and then I think it has crossplay with Sony, but I'm not sure. I'll double check that. Oh, also itch.io/RexiconJesse if you want to buy my tabletop RPG stuff, because we were talking about itch, so I got to plug that. Okay, I'm done.
Nice. And last but not least, B Law, where can people find you on the internet? Also want to point out that both Lampy and Darth Tommy, I think, just signed up for Quirk Chat. It looks like they mentioned in the chat there.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at bossasb, B as in the insect. You can find the company at QuirkChat on Instagram and Twitter. And you can download the app in iOS, so the App Store that we've been talking about.
Right.
As well as in Google Play. It's definitely more of like a beta version, though we have some really awesome updates that are coming in June. We're completely changing up the feed. We're revamping the clips feature that we've been just testing out this past month. And we're also introducing a new feature called Squads, which will allow you to build communities within the platform. So yeah, just stay tuned. And that's it.
Thank you. Tommy's asking, can we get the Twitter handle in the chat? Which Twitter handle? Bees? Is that what they're asking for?
Mine is, oh yeah, BossAssB. I think it's BossAssB_ on Twitter because somebody took it and isn't using it. So,
Oh,
right?
Boom. Is that... Do I have it right? I'll double check that in a second. But you guys can catch me at SigmaGears9 on Twitch, on Twitter, on Instagram, all those different places. Don't miss Super Smash Sunday this afternoon, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We go for 3 hours to play Smash, It's a great time. Come through, hang out. Following that, just follow my Twitter. You'll see when I'm on for like all the different escapist streams. And we'll be back here next week for more news, hopefully. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Thanks, all my guests. That's it.
And I want to say happy birthday to my son. Happy birthday,
All right.
JJ.
It's happy birthday
Oh.
to JJ.
Happy birthday!
Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
Just turned 2. Happy birthday.
Oh.
Aw.
All right. Bye.
Bye.